Well, if you're in a PPR league and you're trying to figure out which tight end should go number one, why not pick the guy who has finished number one 4 years in a row? That would be Travis Kelce, and that's what average draft position is telling us now. But you know what? George Kittle was just as good on a per-game basis last year. He did, however, miss 2 games. We are looking at the top 5 tight ends in average draft position and in our consensus rankings. I am Adam Azer with Dave Richard, with Ben Gretsch, with Heath Cummings, and guys, you got to know when to hold them. Sing it. Know when to fold. All right.
Hey, welcome to the winner's circle. We now have 2 former poker champions on the podcast.
Former poker champions? What does that mean?
Well, I mean, you won last night. I won 3 weeks ago. Maybe someone else will win. I mean, we're the only 2 people that have ever won.
That's true, but I'm not the former poker champion. I'm the current reigning.
I was trying to figure out what your point was, Heath, because I clearly beat Adam. He just had to quit. So we had to split the pot. I was, forced.
You had a clear path to victory, and you did not know when to hold him, know when to fold him.
That's right.
You folded to his request. You should have just made him blind out, and you would have won the tournament.
By the way, you must think that the Falcons beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl. By your logic, that's kind of, it wasn't even that big of a blow. But anyway,
you literally quit. I mean, if the Patriots quit, then
right,
the Falcons
go to the
quit.
Falcons and say, "Hey, let's just end this thing right now."
There was no victor in tournament 2. That much has been established. No one won the second tournament.
I think when one person quits,
I didn't quit.
Says, we have to split the pot.
Yeah, but then I ended up winning. Okay, so anyway, here's ADP right now. Top 5 tight ends.
Please. Do not talk about poker on Twitch from yesterday.
Travis,
that was your best showing yet, Dave. What do you mean? You're getting better. One of these days you might win one.
Second place.
But something good came out of it, Dave. We're donating a little bit of money to a local food bank, so that's good stuff. True. Travis Kelce's going 21st overall. This is on NFC average draft position. George Kittle's going 26th, and then you got to wait a long time. Mark Andrews, 52nd. Zach Ertz, 54th. Darren Waller, 66th. Kelce and Kittle. Kittle's 26th. Kelce 21, Kittle 26th. And then Andrews and Ertz are 52nd and 54th, respectively. And Darren Waller is 66th. What's your overall reaction to that, guys?
Sounds about right to me. I think you might end up seeing Kelce go a little sooner than that in regular redraft leagues, PPR leagues this fall. But otherwise, that's the order. Certainly at the top, Kelce then Kittle, both top 30 picks. And then I really think there does seem to be some traction to Andrews going ahead of Ertz. I'm not there yet. I would still take Ertz ahead of Andrews, but they're going to be really close to each other. And if you can get either one in round 5, you're killing it.
Yeah, I like Andrews and Ertz. My biggest takeaway from this group is just that Darren Waller as a tight end 5 goes too high at 66. I think we saw this last year. There's some elite tight ends, and then it's just natural that drafts aren't going to go 3 or 4 rounds without anyone drafting a tight end. So somebody's got to go in the round after Ertz. But I think Waller is a significant step down from the Andrews and Ertz tier, and everyone from that point forward is a significant step down. And so it's that middle range from tight end 5 to probably tight end 9 that I probably won't draft the tight end in that range of drafts all year, because I just think that's one of the least, EV positives, people would say, expected value positive moves you can make in drafts, because I think you can go after these elite guys, and then I think you can wait till really late.
Waller, I have moved all over the place. I think I have him 7th right now, but every time I look at my tight end rankings, I move him. And like the difference between him and that group of guys, because I mostly agree with what Ben said. We just push up the next tier of guys and say, well, look at what they could be. That's what we were doing last year with Evan Ingram, with Hunter Henry, with O.J. Howard. And like they had a lot of great markings of what could be. The difference with Waller is he's put up an 1,100-yard season. Those guys had not done that before. So like he's already shown us something more than what those guys had in their career. I have ranked him in PPR as high as number 3. I wouldn't be surprised if Darren Waller finishes number 3 this year, but I also think he could fall off quite a bit, and there's significant risk.
And he had a 16-game season, Darren Waller, and he caught 90 balls, 90 catches. I think Andrews played 15 games. His 16-game pace, I think, was 68 catches. That's a 22-catch difference based on last year in PPR, if we're specifically talking about that. So I gave you the ADP. It was Kelce, Kittle, Andrews, Ertz, Waller. Our consensus rankings are slightly different. Kelce, Kittle, Ertz, Andrews, Waller, followed by Hunter Henry, followed by Tyler Higbee. We'll focus first on the top five.
Let's just clarify something. I don't know if Dave is getting extra points for his rankings or what, but I think I have Andrews third. Jamie has Andrews third. Dave has Ertz third. We all have the other guy fourth. I don't know why Zach Ertz would be number 3 in our consensus rankings, but Mark Andrews is number 3 in our consensus rankings.
Okay, fair enough. I'm not. This was a spreadsheet that was given to me, so fair enough.
I wonder when was it given to you?
Last week.
Okay, so I wonder if Jamie made a change.
There's hanging chads or something, but
okay. So Kelce, Kittle, Andrews, Ertz, Waller. And considering Andrews is a lower catch guy, at least he was last year, and Ertz, has been 85 plus catches pretty reliably. He also might have a 20 catch edge on Andrews. Let's talk about that. Does Andrews deserve to be ranked ahead of Zach Ertz?
Andrews is the closest thing to Kittle. We talked about this on the I guess the advanced stats show, and the also we mentioned him on a show where we talked about slot usage. And Andrews and Kittle, we talked a lot about routes run with the tight ends. Andrews and Kittle are very interesting because neither runs anywhere near the amount of routes that Kelce and Ertz run. They're like the top 2 in the league, and Kittle and Andrews are around like 9th or 10th. But their teams both use a lot of deception and scheme looks for them, play action, and get them open. And so they both see a lot of targets per route. They lead the league by quite a bit in targets per route, both of them. And they're both very efficient on their targets. And I think what that says to me, especially for Andrews this year, is that there's a lot of upside for him to grow, because when we talked about the slot, in the slot episode, we talked about Andrews playing in the slot a lot. A really high percentage, and also Hayden Hurst did. And it was a positive note for Hayden Hurst because Austin Hooper had in Atlanta, and Hurst should slide into that role well in Atlanta. But it also was a good indication that Baltimore rotated their tight ends a lot last year. They used Nick Boyle, and they used Hurst as kind of a backup to Andrews and spelled him a little. There's a possibility Andrews just runs a lot more routes this year and plays more of that Hurst role. They didn't really bring anyone else in. They always liked Hurts. They drafted Hurst ahead of Andrews in the same draft a couple of years back. But now they don't really have anyone. They've brought in some more tight end depth, but they don't really have anyone that's going to compete with Andrews for those tight end slot routes that they like to use. It wouldn't surprise me if Andrews suddenly jumps up in those routes now, still has a pretty high target per route rate, still has a lot of efficiency on his targets, and all of a sudden he's a lot better.
Yeah, I think there's like the flip side of that is, yes, Zach Ertz caught 100+ passes 2 years ago, and he ended up last year with 88 catches, but it was basically all in games where Alshon Jeffrey didn't play. And I don't know for sure that Alshon Jeffrey is going to be back to himself this year, that the Eagles are talking as if they expect he's going to play this year. But Deshaun Jackson sounds like he's pretty much a full go for the start of camp. They've got Jalen Reagor. They've got Marquise Goodwin. Like, they have enough wide receivers now to where a lot of guys would have to get hurt for Greg Ward to be their only wide receiver. And that was really the only time when Ertz acted as if that number 1 target for Philadelphia last year. So I think the split with Ertz and Goddard at tight end, and the fact that the Eagles are probably going to throw 40 fewer passes to their tight ends than they did last year, really makes me concerned about him being an 80 catch guy. I think he could be a 70 catch guy. The problem is he's not been elite on a per target basis like Kelce, Kittle, and Andrews and Waller all were last year and have been. He's about a 7.5 yards per target guy. And if he's just getting 7 targets per game, that's not going to be enough.
Okay,
that's
Dave.
On the low side for Ertz. It's 7.5 targets per game. I think he's done that once in the last 4 years.
Well, yeah, that's about where he was in games where Alshon played last year.
Right. I don't think Alshon is going to be a big enough factor this year. He's still banged up. the team is saying that he's on his own schedule to get back. Wouldn't surprise me in the least if he started the year on the PUP list and then made a minimal impact when he came back.
Jackson and Rager will have a bigger impact than Greg Ward, presumably.
No question. But I almost wonder if those guys. So when I think of Mark Andrews, I think of him as a great target for Lamar Jackson in the short to mid range. Okay. You don't see a lot of deep balls go to Mark Andrews. You see those go to other receivers, although he gets some. I think Ertz is going to be used the same way. I think as far as being the primary guy inside of 10 to 15 yards, that's where Ertz has been. And I think that's where he's going to continue to be for Philadelphia. And he's been reliable in that regard. And it's basically the biggest reason why I've got Ertz ahead of Andrews. He's going to get more targets per game. He's reliably done it pretty much, certainly the last 4 seasons. I was going to say his entire career. I don't know if that's entirely true, because at the beginning it took him a little while to get going. But he's a good player, big red zone threat. Teams try and slow him down. I don't think teams are going to have an easy job double teaming him and dealing with Jackson, Rager, and all the other weapons in Philadelphia. And I think Philadelphia's offense is going to move the ball effectively again. So to me, it's a simple argument for Ertz. We've seen him do it a ton of times. The target share is going to be there for him. Nowhere is he near as explosive as Mark Andrews, and I can't make that argument. But I can see him being just as good in terms of touchdowns with more targets.
Can I tell you something kind of strange, Heath? Because I've been throwing out that stat for Zach Ertz, those splits with and without Alshon Jeffrey, the amount of targets he's gotten. But how about this? I just did this math, so I think it's right. Carson Wentz played all 16 games, 8 with Jeffrey, 8 without Jeffrey. Now, without Jeffrey includes games in which Alshon left early. He attempted 270 passes without Alshon Jeffrey. In the games, no, with Alshon Jeffrey. 270 pass attempts with Alshon Jeffrey. Without Alshon Jeffrey, 337. So he was just throwing a lot more in those 8 games without Alshon Jeffrey. And of course, it has nothing to do with Alshon Jeffrey. But it's a little bit of coincidence. So if you just want to look, instead of targets per game, if you want to look at target share per game, which I did before the show, Zach Ertz had a 21.5% target share with Alshon Jeffrey and a 25.9% target share without Alshon Jeffrey. So it was a big difference. But I just thought that was weird. They threw so much more in the games that Jeffrey didn't play. But the target share went from 26% to 21.5% when Jeffrey played. So there's that. But Dave already kind of gave his reason.
Yeah, and I was just going to look and see where I've got Tim, if I can find my Eagles projections here. I think I've probably got him at like 23 or 24. I've got him at 21, actually. So right where he was with Alshon last year. Okay.
And that would be lower than the other guys we're talking about, at least what their target shares were last year, where Kittle's been like a 26% guy. Kelce's been like a 24% guy. All right, so that's one debate that we'll have today. Let's do a little bit of fill in the blank. We also have to just debate Kelce versus Kittle. Even though everybody's got Kelce number 1, we should still talk about that.
We don't have to do that.
I'll at least play devil's advocate, or somebody else will. I do want to promote our Facebook group, though. Join our Facebook group. Search Fantasy Football Today on Facebook, or the link is also in the episode description. And if you're listening on our podcast, click on the link and join the Facebook group. It's great. Post some topics in there all the time. Get your feedback on it. And in fact, we're looking to do a top 5 on tomorrow's show, on Friday's show. I asked in the Facebook group, what should our top 5 be? So I'll try to pick the best response from there. You can also ask keeper questions, draft strategies, whatever. The First Cut podcast is awesome right now. We've got golf, we got sports. So check out the First Cut podcast. Go to cbssports.com/podcast or podcasts. I think either one will get you there, and find a list of all of our shows. And finally, we do have the mailbag on Friday, so we'll be using Apple Podcast questions and emails at fantasyfootball@cbsi.com. Time for fill in the blank. The top 5 tight end with the most upside. Probably should eliminate the first 2 from this, right? Let's make this a 3 through 5, or a 3 and beyond discussion. Top 5 tight end with the most upside that's not Kelce or Kittle.
Andrews.
Ertz.
Did I get sorry, everybody answered there?
We did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we stayed on our sides of the
Okay.
Andrews Ertz debate.
Okay. Top 5 tight end with the most downside is blank.
Waller.
Whoever the 5th tight end is.
Yeah.
No matter what rankings you're looking at, consensus and individual, that fit tight end, that's the one.
Yeah, I think it has to be Waller.
Now, look, I like Mark Andrews. So when I give this statistic, don't think that I don't like him, but I have to give this because when I talk about what Jared Cook did in the last 8 games of the season, he was the number 1 tight end in non-PPR, number 2 in PPR. That was after Drew Brees returned and after he himself returned from injury. I always get, yeah, but look at the targets, right? He had 537 yards and 7 touchdowns on only 38 targets. Look what Mark Andrews did in his last 8 games. He had 28 catches, same as Cook, 403 yards. Cook had 537 more. Big difference. And they both had 7 touchdowns. And Cook and Andrews only had 5 more targets than Cook.
Wait, Cook had 500 more yards?
No.
No. Sorry.
He didn't.
537 for Cook, 403 for Andrews.
Okay.
Sorry. But they both had 7 touchdowns. Andrews only had 5 more targets. That's only an 86 target pace in the last 8 games of the season. So why do I get so much pushback on liking Jared Cook? I like him as like a 12.
Andrews only played 7 of those games, right?
No. He played 15 games. I separated them, his first 7 and his last 8 after their bye.
Well, I think the obvious big difference is Mark Andrews was really good before that. Jared Cook was nothing before that.
Yeah, Bridgewater.
And
Bridgewater.
extend that not just to the first half of the season, but career. Jared Cook had a career high yards per target last year by over a yard. He had a career high touchdown rate for sure. He had a career high raw touchdowns, and he had 9 touchdowns. I think his previous career was 6 or 5. And Andrews the year before was also very productive in his first year, and then again in his second year, and very clearly is this progressing player going into age 24, third season, with a really strong track record now. Whereas Cook, you're pulling a half season sample that is the best half season of his career.
So the question is not. It's really more like, do you see volume downside, target volume downside for Andrews? Are we overlooking it? Because I know you see it for Jared Cook, but do you also see it for Andrews?
I don't think his target share is going to go down. I don't.
Yeah.
If it
They
goes
just
up,
don't
it might
throw
go
that
up
much.
by half a target per game, maybe a full target per
His
game.
his target share might go down, but they're going to throw more. And one other thing that we probably don't talk about quite enough, the Ravens had 3 or 4 different games last year where they pulled their starters in the third quarter because they were just trouncing a team so badly.
Yeah.
That's probably not going to happen again.
But
Okay.
the question is fair about Andrews, that this is a run heavy team. They're not going to throw a ton. He's not going to be a 150 target guy, obviously. But I would also echo what both Dave and Heath just said, and just add in that I think what he did last year is closer to his floor, especially now that Hurst has been removed.
Except for the touchdowns.
Except for the touchdowns. Yeah, target floor. I just don't see a lot of scenarios where Andrews plays a healthy 16 games this year and sees fewer targets.
Okay.
He could be less efficient, yes.
He had 98 targets in 15 games. Okay, next question. The top 5 tight end that I won't draft is blank.
Waller.
Zach Ertz.
Waller's the consensus top 5 tight end that I won't draft.
I'll say Ertz. Just because he generally goes before Andrews, and I can usually just say when Ertz goes, I'll draft Andrews.
Another name I'd be willing to say is Kelce, because I know his ADP on NFC is 21st, and if he's there, I'm going to take him. But I would expect to see him go between 10th and 16th in most drafts. And what I know about the tight end position and how comfortable I am with it, I don't mind waiting. I don't want to be the guy that takes the first tight end on draft.
The only thing is, and I was just looking at this, Kelce, I think the worst season he had in the last 4 years, he outscored the number 6, so the average starting tight end, by 60 fantasy points. He has been such an advantage every single year, and he still has Patrick Mahomes.
He does, but there's another tight end who's practically as good as he is, in George Kittle. Kittle, when you ask who has
he's
the
going
most,
4 picks later. You're not choosing between those two. I mean, if you're passing on,
they're both there at 21st, I'm going to take Kelce over.
Right.
Kittle. I agree with you. So I guess I shouldn't have said I don't want to be the first guy to take a tight end. I just don't want to take a tight end early on. I don't want to pass up the talent that I can get between 10th and 16th overall at receiver and running back.
So when we
I
do
can
drafts,
get a good tight end in early round 4 if I really wanted to. Maybe even late round 5 if I really wanted to.
When we do drafts, I think Kelce and Kittle are going earlier than their ADP. Kelce 21st, Kittle 26th. And in that case, you really could be sitting there saying, okay, it's late in the second round. I could take Kelce here, or I could take a running back or a wide receiver and gamble that Kittle will be there in round 3, which is understandable. However, in our draft, it's more like the end of round 1, and you either have to take Kelce now, or you're not getting either Kelce or Kittle by the end of round 3. So they just seem to go earlier in our drafts. But if Kittle's ADP is really 26th, then you legitimately could be asking yourself in the second round, do I take Kelce now, or do I gamble and hope Kittle is available to me with my third pick? Which is an interesting dilemma.
You add in Dave's comments and point about feeling comfortable grabbing a late tight end. I think that's pushing, Kelce and Kittle's ADP down in places like NFC where I think just purely on value and for the reasons that, Heath just said about how consistently good Kelce's been, he's a first round pick. He's a top 10 player. I mean, he's such a difference maker at tight end and we feel so confident in him. But just what the points he can get you at a tight end position would indicate, maybe not value is the right word, but there's so many other options at that position and potential upside. And we've seen so many breakout players come from late in drafts, including Darren Waller last year and several others. It's hard to justify relative to the drop off at other positions.
And just to put a little bow on that, Travis Kelce has been a top 12 wide receiver 3 years in a row in both formats.
Mm-hmm.
So
he was as good as Allen Robinson last year.
All right, then let me ask you one more fill in the blank. A new one just came up with this one. I don't know how, but I didn't have it in the notes. The top 5 tight end with the least upside is blank.
Ertz.
I'll say Waller.
Yeah,
I guess Waller, but
yeah, I don't know because I think Waller could have as many targets as Ertz, and was a lot more efficient than Ertz has ever been last year.
I don't see it. I think the Raiders made a big point to improve their receiving core in the draft.
So did the Eagles.
Yeah, not as much.
Yeah, but Ertz has been better than Waller. When you talk about their absolute upside, Waller's just probably close to what he did last year or a little bit more.
I'd be stunned if he did that again this year. 90 catches again? I would be stunned if Waller.
I would be too, but maybe that's his upside. And my point is just that Ertz has already had like 116 catch season, whereas Waller had 117
which I don't think
targets.
He's going to have.
Yeah, I don't either, but when you talk about upside, Ertz has done a lot more.
We will debate, at least ADP-wise, Kelce in round 2 or Kittle in round 3. I'm going to talk more about Darren Waller because you know what? Maybe he's just a better football player than we're giving him credit for. It's a very elite list of tight ends who have done what Darren Waller did last year. All that's coming up right after this on Fantasy Football Today. So give me your top 5 guys in PPR. Heath, you can start. Top 5 in PPR.
Kelce, Kittle, Andrews, Ertz, and basically a 3-way tie, but currently Evan Ingram.
Okay, Dave?
Oh, Ingram 5th. That's interesting. I will go Kelce, Kittle, Ertz, Andrews, and Higbeast.
Okay, Ben?
I have Kelce, Kittle. I'm not going to take a side on the Ertz-Andrews debate. I literally cannot decide between them.
No.
I'm not. I won't pick one before the other. And if I miss them both, then I miss them both. That's how I play it.
It's round 7 in your draft. Somehow they're both still there. PPR, who you taking?
Especially in PPR, I can't decide. Andrews, I would take a non-PPR for sure. This
is your job, Ben.
Someone's looking for this piece of advice. Someone's decision will be made based on what you say right now.
I mean, I have had Ertz over Andrews until all that slot stuff that I talked about earlier, and that's what has really got me more excited about Andrews. And now I got him so close. I can't break the tie right now. I will eventually. I'm sure.
Sounds like Andrews is the way you're going.
You've got like 15 minutes to break the tie. We'll come back to you on that.
And Ertz, it sounds like I'm feeling Andrews more. He's the one that's rising for me, but Ertz is also the one that I felt more comfortable in for most of the offseason, and I don't want to just throw him to the scrappy. You know what I mean? It's like
who's your number 5?
5 is Ingram, which it has been all offseason, and he just copied me.
That's kind of true.
Well, next time I'm just going to say I'm not making a rankings choice. I don't have to. I'm going to wait until midway through.
Go back to the wide receiver.
Tell you which one I liked better.
You know what I never know about Zach Ertz? I never remember. Is it Z-A-C-K or C-H? It's an H, right?
H.
It's
okay.
an H.
I'm putting a Twitter poll up
Can
here.
I just say something
PBR, who
about
do you
Zach
like,
Ertz?
Andrews or Ertz?
It's not nice.
What?
I'm just not sure that he's that special anymore.
Who, Ertz?
Like, I kind of think they might be better off throwing the ball 130 times to Dallas Goedert and throwing it 60 times to Zach Ertz.
I think the Eagles feel a little differently.
Doesn't do much with the targets that he gets. And again, when they had receivers last year, they didn't really treat him like an elite tight end.
Would you argue that he could have a better year in terms of efficiency this year now that there's speed on the outside that defenses have to respect? Whereas when all the receivers were hurt last year, it made it pretty easy. On third down, we're just going to cover up Ertz as best as we can. And that might have been the reason why Goddard ended up having some nice games.
I would hope so, because he was legitimately bad last year.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he could be average again.
Legitimately bad.
Legitimately inefficient. Statistically,
6.8 yards per target. He'd been at least 7.5 to 8 every other year of his career, pretty much.
So yeah, I think he can get back to that 7. It's like, I think 7.5 is pretty close to average for a tight end. I think he can get back to that.
But it's not compared to these other guys, because I put down, yards per target. I rank them 1 through 5. Mark Andrews has been at 11 and 8.7 in 2 seasons. George Kittle, career 9.6. The last 2 years, he's been 10.1 and 9.8. Darren Waller, 9.8 yards per target in 2019. Travis Kelce, career 9.0, right around there every time. Zach Ertz, career 7.5. Like, he's just, compared to the rest of these elite tight ends, he's the worst per catch. He's the worst per target.
We do have to know depth of target, especially for Kelce and Andrews. They see further downfield targets, and especially for Ertz, who sees like 6 yards of depth on average per target. And then Waller and Kittle. What's that?
I think Waller was really low on depth per target.
Waller and Kittle are a little different story. Waller had a big yak season, yards after the catch, and Kittle has had a big yak career. I mean, Kittle is just a yak monster. Those guys are adding stuff after the catch, which Ertz isn't. But part of yards per target in general, we do have to acknowledge the depth of the target.
All right, so you just heard 2 people on this show say that Evan Ingram is their 5th tight end. Yet you heard me say that Ingram is not top 5 in our consensus rankings. Jamie's rankings are factored in here, and Ben's are yours? I don't think they are, right?
I don't think so.
Okay, so that's the answer to that. Ingram is actually 8th in our consensus rankings based on the spreadsheet I'm looking at, which might not be any good anyway, but it doesn't matter. Let's get back to these debates. Okay, so just tell me quickly, why is it not really a debate, Travis Kelce over Kittle, when per game they were dead even last year, and Kittle, the 2 games he missed were against the 2 best matchups in fantasy. So I straight up guarantee you he would have been the best tight end in fantasy last year if he had played those 2 games.
Because one of them has been the best in football for the last 4 years, and one of them you have to come up with a convoluted argument for why he would have been better.
No,
that's why.
I don't think so. That's not that convoluted. He's younger.
4 years of actual things versus 1 year of Azer stats.
Look, George Kittle was amazing in 2018, okay? He set the record most yards by a tight end. He just didn't have a touchdown.
I don't think this is as obvious as Heath is making it. I'll just come out and go.
Well, I do, actually. I think it's obviously Kelce, but I'm having fun with it.
Kittle's entering his age 27 season. He's right in the middle of his prime. Kelce's entering his age 31 season. He's done it 4 years in a row, but he's not going to do it until he's 50 years old. I mean, at some point, players drop off. And I'm not saying he's going to, but Mecole Hardman came on big last year. They brought back Sammy Watkins. It's possible that Kelce's role trends down a little bit as he gets to 31, and maybe it's more like 32 or 33, and we're not have to worry about it in 2020. But I'm more concerned about that with Kelce than I am with Kittle, who is, now Deebo Samuel's banged up. Kittle's he's right in his prime. I mean, I think that torch is going to get passed at some point. It might be 2021, but it's not crazy.
Dave, you want to weigh in?
Kelce's got the better quarterback. He's got the better track record. He plays in an offense where defenses, like I was saying with Philadelphia, defenses have to do something about the deep ball. With Tyreek Hill on the field, man, Kelce sees so much open space. They scheme it well for him, and he finds it all the time. I think that he's the number 1.
Yeah, I think Kelce's the number 1 too.
Yeah, I think the Mahomes argument. This is the fact that the Chiefs could throw for so many more touchdowns, and touchdowns are an issue for Kittle. 3 seasons under Kyle Shanahan, no players had more than 6 touchdown catches. And you look back at his entire career as a coach or a coordinator, there's not a single double-digit touchdown catch season. Andre Johnson, Julio Jones, and so on. And it's not like those grow on trees, but it's been like 10 years or something of coaching, and not one player's had double-digit touchdown catches. A little strange.
Imagine that the guy that uses 7 running backs likes to diversify his passing game.
But at the same time, like if I really can get Kittle in round 3 instead of Kelce in round 2, would you do that? Would you rather make that trade-off?
The end of round 2 is basically the same thing as the beginning of round 3. So I can get the same running backs and receivers at the beginning of round 3 as I can at the end of round 2. So I'd probably just take Kelce.
I think the bigger decision here is, all right, I'm picking in slot 10, slot 11, slot 12. And I know that neither tight end will be there when I'm up in late round 3. Kittle, maybe if it's a miracle, I can't count on it. So do I love Kelce so much to the point that I will take him where I know he'll be there because I know I can't get Kittle at another point? That's the conversation you have to have with yourself when you're evaluating tight end and you're picking late in the draft. It's a more interesting question if you're picking at 6 or 7, because you're not going to take Kelce in round 1 unless you're crazy. And then in round 2, you would probably hope that Kelce would be there, but isn't that a little too early to take Kittle? Or are you running the risk of you're going to cross your fingers that Kittle will be there in round 3? Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, but let me give you
a decision. Just the tight end decision with one of your first 3 picks. It's kind of easy if you're on the ends because you figure Kittle will have a chance to get to you in late round 2 or early round 3. If you're picking in the early slots, like if you get McCaffrey in round 1 or Saquon. And then if you're picking late, Kelce is more in line. But if you're in the middle, you might have to make some tough decisions on what you want to do at tight end.
I think Adam wants us to live in the ADP world and not in the our drafts world.
a little bit. Let me give
this
you.
is
Let me give you.
everybody's drafts world.
We don't know
I think
that.
ADP
I'm just giving
is
you
more representative of other people's drafts than ours are.
I would think so. All right, let me give you an ADP example that is.
There are hundreds of those and dozens of ours.
Let me give you an ADP example.
How many drafts have you
Come
guys
on.
been in where Travis Kelce has been past 16th?
Not a lot.
Well, that's true, but I mean, our set of examples is much smaller than the overall ADP of people playing for money.
Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. I know you haven't been able to hear me because we're having some audio issues. I know Dave was interrupting me a little bit. That was not on purpose. But let me give you this real quick, this ADP example. Would you rather have Chris Godwin and George Kittle or Mike Evans and Travis Kelce?
Mike Evans and Travis Kelce. And the reason I just did a whole thing on Kittle, a whole little rant, but the reason I will still always have Kelce ahead, especially right now, is all the things I said about Andrews and Kittle not running as many routes. And I feel like Andrews could tick up. Kittle's is very clearly, I think at this point, not going to. They use him as a blocker. He's such an effective blocker. He's such a good all-around player that he's not going to need to run more routes. Andrews is this slot guy that they don't really use as this big-time blocker. That's the reason for them running lower routes is different. Kelce, meanwhile, is this every year among the top routes run type tight end who has a higher average depth of target as well and catching plays, balls down the field from Mahomes, whereas Kittle relies on yards after the catch, like I said, and that can be a little more fluky. So I really like Kittle, but I still think Kelce just running way more routes, running routes more downfield, those things are just all more conducive to more fantasy success.
Okay, Dave and Heath, it's Kittle and Godwin or Kelce and Evans. Who do you take?
PPR, I'm going to take Godwin, the Godwin-Kittle combo. Non-PPR, I'll go the other way.
I'll go Kelce, Evans in both.
Okay, let me ask you guys. We've talked a lot about Waller and Ertz. Let me ask you about Darren Waller. Oh, sorry, we talked about Andrews and Ertz. Let me ask you about Darren Waller. Doesn't seem like you guys are super thrilled about him, but we don't really know what he was before last year for a variety of reasons, suspension and whatnot. And he was a wide receiver, converted wide receiver. It's possible he's one of the more talented tight ends in football. I'm worried you guys are selling him a little bit short on a talent level. I know you're concerned about the targets and the offensive weapons that they added, but maybe it's not much of a question, but maybe he's just awesome. I guess is what I'm trying to say about Waller.
Where I come out on Waller is it's kind of speaking out of both sides of my mouth. Ultimately, I think his targets are going to go down because the Raiders have added so much talent. But part of the allure for Henry Ruggs joining the Raiders is having him speed downfield to open things up underneath for guys like Waller, who is just, a humongous target who can make moves after the catch. So maybe the argument is, okay, we know his targets are going to go down. How much will they go down? And could the rise in efficiency make up for it? And the rise of efficiency could also come into play in the red zone because he only scored 3 times last year. I think that's something that just has to be measured and considered. Talent-wise, I think the Raiders have harnessed it. I think they know what to do with him.
He is he has a very wide range of outcomes because while I do think it's more likely his targets go down than up, I'm projecting him to get fewer targets. The Raiders threw like 523 passes last year. That was about 10% below the league median. I would expect them to throw more passes. I do expect him to score more touchdowns. So I mostly agree with you, Adam. I think he's awesome. He could finish anywhere from 3 through 10, and I wouldn't be that surprised. I don't know exactly what the Raiders are doing, as usual.
I agree with all three of you. I mean, I think Adam, I've realized over the offseason that I've probably been a little too harsh on how good he was talent-wise. I agree with Heath. The range of outcomes is wide. And then Dave's, I totally agree with and kind of want to expand on a little. The Ruggs point is a very strong one, and it could mean that Waller's just their guy again underneath. It would be very similar to when Ertz started breaking out, when the Eagles started being this air raid vertical offense. Not air raid. That's when air yards became a big thing in Eagles, Twitter and Eagles blogs. They were calling the air yards offense because they were very vertical. Carson Wentz was throwing downfield a ton, but it was opening up so much in the intermediate range for Ertz to just rack up, those really catchable targets and a lot of receptions. That could certainly happen for Waller. But then the next level that I'm also worried about is, well, they brought in Jason Witten, and they've talked a little bit about using two tight end sets. I don't think Witten would have signed there after coming out of retirement a year ago to not play, and I feel like Gruden would be honest with him about that. And then they also have Hunter Renfrow, who impacted Waller's targets pretty substantially when he was healthy late in the year. And typically we see that with slot receivers and tight ends. They're both running those short area and intermediate area routes. And, formationally, when you have a slot receiver on the field, you have fewer tight ends. So having a decent slot receiver impacts Waller as well. So it's like all of these factors where I could see, like Heath said, that the upside would be Ruggs and everything help build the passing game through Waller as their main target because they see how good he was last year, like Adam said, or they've added so much weaponry and so much talent that even though they're going to build that way, they have other options to throw to. They can throw to Renfrow and they can use Witten out of 2 tight end sets. And now Waller's targets come way down. It's a wild one to try to figure out.
And none of you have him number 5. So let's talk about that. Make the case, Heath and Ben for Evan Ingram, Dave for Tyler Higbee, and then we'll read a few emails and get on out of here. First, the case for Evan Ingram, Heath.
No. I'm taking the Ben approach here. I'm going to steal it.
It's your job.
In my overall rankings, I have Evan Ingram, Hunter Henry, and Darren Waller back to back to back. I get so excited about the potential of Evan Ingram and thinking he might actually be the more downfield option. And then I look at how they've used him in recent history. And I think about how Garrett used tight ends. Like he targeted him a lot, generally within 4 or 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. And that's the way Ingram's been used. So I think there's potential for Ingram. I can't make a case for him over Waller. I switch them every time I do. I'm going to switch them right now so I don't have to.
Okay.
So we
Literally just gave me so much crap for having Ertz and Andrews in the same situation. And then he went with
He just talked through it, and he's made a decision. It sounds like he's going to put Waller 5th.
Waller's going back to 5th.
Good job,
And I don't
Heath.
mind Waller over Ingram. I'm worried about Ingram just being there. He's had so many issues of staying on and off the field that I almost don't want to deal with the headache. the risk, especially if he's the 5th tight end off the board, the risk isn't worth the reward.
Okay, Ben, convince us. Evan Ingram 5th.
I just think the ceiling is higher than definitely Waller, and arguably any other tight end after that point, including guys like Rob Gronkowski, who, could be amazing, I guess. We don't really know what to expect from him, but Ingram, 4.3, 4.3 40, just ridiculous athleticism for a tight end. He's essentially a wide receiver playing tight end. When he came out, we knew right away he was going to have a huge receiving profile and be that type of player. He's actually been used in line more than I think a lot of people expected. Not really just a slot guy, and they've talked about him being a decent enough blocker, even though he's not as big as some other tight ends. But yeah, just an incredible athlete, and he's been very productive and drawn a lot of targets when he's been healthy. So I understand the injury prone element, but I just feel very, very confident that when he plays 16 games, and that it will happen at some point. Players don't, get injury prone for their entire career, or at least some do, I guess. But I am hoping that it won't happen to Ingram, I guess. And if and when he plays 16 games, he'll be very good. I mean, he played 15 as a rookie, he got 115 targets. That's like Darren Waller numbers last year in terms of volume, and his yards per target weren't amazing, but he was very good that year. And then he's just been banged up the last 2 years. I think if he's healthy, this is the guy that can compete for a top 3 or top 4 spot in the end of season rankings.
I have a question. Would you, just looking at their profiles coming out of college, would you say that Evan Ingram is a better athlete than Darren Waller?
I would.
I haven't looked at Waller's profile for long enough. He's so much older, but Waller was underrated good athlete. That's why he stuck around even with some off the field stuff, right?
Because I
Sure.
I'm looking at their
yeah, he's a really good athlete.
like he ran a 4.46. This has got Ingram at a 4.42.
Right, and he was
a little
20 pounds bigger. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said, Ben, Ingram has more upside than all of them. I personally would say that Ingram and Waller have more upside than everyone that's ranked below them, not the guys ahead of them. I don't know that he has more upside than Waller, but I understand he certainly has a lot of upside. I mean, he and David Njoku and O.J. Howard, first-round tight ends, ton of upside. Great football players.
The difference between him and a guy like O.J. Howard is when Ingram's been healthy, he's seen targets at a high rate. That's an important point.
All right, Dave. Tyler Higbee, we'll finish on this.
I've made it clear all offseason long that I don't have a lock on who is 5th. For now, it's Higbee, who I feel most comfortable with. He reminds me of Kittle. And late last year, we talked about this. He averaged over 11 targets per game. He's not going to do that this year in those final 5 games, but he was amazing. I think he helped kind of turn Jared Goff's season. I wouldn't say he turned it around, because it really, the Rams weren't, it really felt like the Rams weren't ever like in the thick of things as far as the playoff race goes. They had 10 wins, but I always felt like they were kind of just like in neutral.
Yeah.
In that spot. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
but,
they were never contenders. Like if they snuck in, I don't think anybody was going to take them to win the Super Bowl.
I guess the safest way to call it is that they were kind of contenders, but no one seriously considered them strong contenders.
Right.
But Goff, at least his fantasy numbers were better in those final 5 games. And I think Higbee was a big part of it. I think the Rams are going to keep him as a big part of their offense. I think they're going to run a ton of 2 tight end sets. And when they do go to 3 wide, you're going to see more of Higbee than you will of Everett. And I see a lot of like explosive yards after contact plays from him. He averaged more yards after yards after contact per catch than Kelce, than Ertz, than Andrews. It was like almost 6 yards. It was pretty incredible, and that's on the whole year, not just in the final 5 games. I think he's got a lot of potential to finish as a top 5 tight end. That's why I've got him 5.
Fantasyfootball@cbsi.com is the email address. Let's do it. From Cody in Syracuse. Dear Michael, Lincoln, Sucre, and Abruzzi. It's Prison Break. Never seen it. Heard it's very good. I've been listening to the pod for a few years now. Since Ben Gretsch has joined the team, it's not hard to figure out his favorite players. This would be Ben's all-in team. Quarterback, Matthew Stafford. Running backs are Miles Sanders and Jonathan Taylor. Wide receivers are DJ Moore and AJ Brown. The flex is Ronald Jones, and the tight end is Mike Gesicki.
I got to tell you, I've come around on Jones.
There's unfortunately, and this is good. Unfortunately, it's wrong. There's no way I would flex a running back in my all-in team. Just no way.
So
it's
that's
just
Christian
all wide
Kirk.
receivers, buddy.
Christian Kirk.
I mean, you left out, Ridley and Juju and
Well, you can't get all.
Yeah,
the
you don't
third
get
and fourth
all the-
rounders. He gave you a first, a second, a third, and a fourth.
Christian Kirk or Tyler Boyd or there's some later round guys that
Christian Kirk would have
flex.
fit very well.
Yeah.
Kirk could be your flex.
That's pretty good. I think Gesicki's his backup tight end personally. I think he took 2 tight ends.
Well, Gesicki's his tight end for about 2 weeks until he has to stream somebody else.
No, he already knows. He already knows they open with the Bills and they open with the Bills and the Patriots. So Ben already knows he's drafted 2 tight ends and stashing Gesicki. From Devin, 10-team half PPR. Aaron Jones, 7th round. Melvin Gordon, 11th round. A.J. Brown, 15th round. Who does Devin keep in that group? I don't know how many, by the way, so just rank them as keepers. Aaron Jones, 7th round. Melvin Gordon, 11th round. A.J. Brown, 15th round.
I think it's Brown, especially if you can keep him for more than 1 year.
Then who?
I'd go Brown.
Followed by?
This is a no-brainer.
Okay, it's
We're gonna say
Brown
Melvin
1.
Gordon, right?
And
No. AJ Brown is the no-brainer. Sorry, I was letting you guys answer first, but yeah.
Jones
I
is
think
second.
Jones is second. Okay.
Jones is second.
I'm taking Jones second too.
And an email from Tyler. I have Zeke and Barkley and Hill in a 10-team dynasty league. Should I
Holy
move
moly.
one of the running backs to get younger guys for the future or play to win now?
Play to win now with those guys. You're still going to be able to get something really good for Zeke after this year, provided he doesn't, have a bus fall on his foot or something like that.
Yeah, it totally depends on the package. Like, if you could move Zeke in a dynasty league like this, where you already have Barkley for Jonathan Taylor plus and another big piece, I would do it probably right now. But I think you can go for it, like Dave said, and wait and try and move him later.
Yeah, I'd like to win this year.
Okay.
When you've got those guys win.
That's why you would trade for Jonathan Taylor.
He's
The
basically
guy who
Zeke.
at 1 pound heavier and 2 inches shorter than Zeke, so much bigger, ran almost a 1/10 of a second faster 40 time, but he thinks doesn't have upside.
I never said that.
All right, to be continued
Never
on
said that
Twitter.
at all.
Oh wait, did Ben make a decision? Let's see what the Twitter folks said. Let's get a Mark Andrews versus Zach Ertz poll update. Ooh, it's very close. Zach Ertz 51.8%, Mark Andrews 48.2%. Ben.
I moved Andrews ahead of Ertz in the last 20 minutes.
There it is.
Okay, well, you're not listening to the Twitter followers, so that's kind of insulting. We will be back tomorrow with another top 5. We don't know what it is yet, but it'll be fun. And your emails and your Apple Podcast questions. Thanks for listening. For Dave Richard, Heath Cummings, and Ben Gretsch, I'm Adam Azer. We'll talk to you tomorrow on Fantasy Football Today. No.
Want more of the Fantasy Football Today podcast and nonstop year-round fantasy advice? It's simple. Hit the subscribe button and hang with us all throughout the year.